Attention denizens of planet Earth.
Broadcasting from Carbondale in Southern Illinois' premier comic shop. And now your host, superlative shaman of comic book knowledge, Dan Brown. Flash the match signal in case of emergency for your host with the most on his mind, Matt Morton. Watch out, criminals. There's nothing funny to him about truth, justice, and the American way. It's Commander Harris himself, Scott Reed. And tuning in from the far reaches of no man's land, the mad scientist dream leader, Mike New. This is Campus Comics Cast.
Hey everybody, welcome to this 69th episode of the Campus Comics Cast. We're still coming to you from quarantine. We're all kind of split up, kind of doing this online, so if there's any weird things going on, that's why. But hopefully someday we will be back in the store at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale. Right now, this isn't a previews episode. We're just going to be talking about some different comic books and things going on right now. And this is Dan Brown, and I'm joined this time by
Scott Reed
and Mike Atchison.
Okay, so I think we had some news items we wanted to get into, Scott. First
off.
Well,
just one. I think that's important because it's time sensitive. But as we're recording this, it is June 18th. All right, and this weekend, so June 19th, 20th, and 21st, HBO is going to be showing The Watchmen for free all 3 days. So if I remember right, that's 9 episodes. So if you can just basically binge about 3 episodes a day, then you can get in that entire series over the weekend. So it's going to be available for free, I think, at HBO. I think it's just going to be HBO.com. I saw something about it on some video on demand services. It's also going to be available for free. So you may have to check your video on demand services, but it's not like it's on HBO Go or HBO Max. Just as far as I know, it's the HBO website that you can binge that. And that is an excellent series. Not for children, obviously, but neither was the comic. But it is an excellent follow-up, I feel like, to the Watchmen comic, even more so than Doomsday Clock was. So,
and you know, one thing about that, it's very topical in this day and age.
Yes.
Where it's being centered around the Tulsa race riots.
Mm-hmm. And
by race riots, I mean that was a very one-sided affair.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's the reason why it's this. That is for this weekend. So I think I can't remember the exact date, but it's one of these next 3 days was the date that occurred in. Was it 1921?
1921. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So it is. That's why HBO is doing that. They have the material, everything that's going on in the country right now. They felt it was very appropriate. I think they should do it for more than 3 days. Give people, a little bit of time to get it in. But
I tell you what, once I started watching it, I tore through it. I'm sure a lot of people get through this in a day.
Oh yeah. Well,
is it on physical media yet? Do you know?
It's coming soon. I don't think it is quite yet.
Okay.
I watched it episodically, so I was having to wait week to week to watch it. So
the other thing is too, you can watch it all now. Then you can go back and listen to our episodes where we kind of talk about some of the episodes and Scott's crazy serial killer note keeping.
Well, no, I just printed out when you're watching. Yeah, when you're watching though, there's a lot of material on the HBO website that's like the back matter material. It's really good. You learn. I learned quite a few things, actually real world things that I was unaware of. So it was definitely an add-on to the. But be careful when you read up on Excalibur. Okay, so I guess our other news item, also I guess on a serious note, is like this. I can't remember even the date now. It's been 2 or 3 days.
I thought it was on the 11th or 12th.
On the 12th. Okay, so Denny O'Neil passed away. So we thought we'd real quick just kind of share, a thought or something about our experience with Denny O'Neil as a writer. So we didn't even talk about who's going to go first on this. So anybody want to jump on it first?
Well, I got into this reading Batman, and at the time he was the editor of the Batman books for so long, sort of post-crisis up until 2000, he was, sort of the word on what was Batman. You know, so like even not just for his writing, but just his editorial control of the character, you know, kind of steered the course for Batman for quite a while there. Again, he did write some stuff. He wrote some good stories during that time too. But yeah, just a real big influence, you know, on Batman during that time. I did get to meet him when I went to San Diego back in '95. And Scott's showing me my birthday present, I think, here.
My birthday was yesterday, so I think
yeah, belated happy birthday.
But yeah, I was 15. I went to San Diego, and I didn't know he was going to be there. The Nightwing miniseries before his regular series the first issue had just come out, and I picked it up, so I had him sign that out of like all the random great books I could have had him sign, you know. So I was hoping to get to meet him at a convention again, and never had the opportunity, but yeah, a lot of good stuff from him.
Yeah, I guess he is maybe it's officially credited with the starting of the Copper Age with Green Lantern 76. It's kind of where they started bringing social commentary a little bit more to the forefront of comics. So I mean, that's with his work there with Neil Adams on Green Lantern, Green Arrow, bringing Green Arrow into that series is probably what started a lot of, you know, again, the whole social commentary and having comics be a little bit more than just the funny books that they were. So that's I mean, and we're still, you know, seeing, and I guess it's that it's progressed a whole lot further since then. You can kind of look back at some of those stories and think that they're a little silly, but you know, when you look at what came before that,
and there had been some of that before, but this was very overt, really in your face, and really kind of tackled the issues, you know, in a more realistic way.
Yeah, my introduction to Denny O'Neil was almost real time. It may not have been when they were actually coming out, because in the early 70s I was only about 5 or 6, but I started reading comics on a regular basis whenever I was about 10 or 11, and I think the first time I recognized his name was in a Justice League comic book, and of course by the time I was picking up Green Lantern, it was already into the Mike Grell drawn issues, but he is, I mean, from the very beginning for me, my experience in comics is that he was one of the most notable writers of the era. And I when it comes to Batman, it's almost like the Batman that we know today came out of his head.
Yeah.
I mean, the detective, I mean, the darkness, and then some of that credit goes to Neil Adams' depictions and the Gothic art and realistic drawing. But Denny's storytelling was fantastic. He's a local guy for us. He's from St. Louis and worked in Cape Girardeau, Missouri for some time. And he was very influential in my comic reading life. Probably the one issue that I remember reading that really stuck out to me as a kid was the one where he took on pollution. It was Justice League of America number 79, and it had some big pollution spewing alien that was overtaking the Justice Leaguers, including Superman, and Superman saying, "Stop the deadly pollution, or no one on Earth will be left alive." And that's sort of like that was typical of his message, or messages. They were very socially conscious, and you got to respect somebody who steps out of the comfort zone to tell stories like that.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. Just, you know, thankfully, you know, it was listed as natural causes. He was 81 years old. He's you know, as old as Batman, you know, born the same year. So again, just nice to see, you know, with everything going on like now, that's what happened, you know. So
yeah.
So we ready to hit our main topic for this episode?
So we're going to start looking at the 80s Vigilante series from DC. Just sort of background for people. If you're, you know, the character was on the Arrow show. If you're only familiar with that version, it is similar. It is not quite the same. They did sort of a red herring with the Adrian Chase character on there because, of course, everyone would expect him to be Vigilante. So they kind of changed that up some for the show. And again, yeah, this is the 80s Adrian Chase version we're going to be talking about, not the Western movie version or any of the later ones that came after.
Right.
This is spinning out of New Teen Titans in the early 80s, which was like the #1 book for DC at the time. Really sort of the darling of the company. And so you can understand why this would spin out of that. It's Marv Wolfman creating this. And again, we're just kind of dealing with the first appearances of the Vigilante character. The secret identity of Adrian Chase goes back almost a year in New Teen Titans before the events we're going to talk about in these books. So there was sort of a subplot going through where he's working as a DA with the Teen Titans, specifically Robin, a lot. And I think it's kind of interesting during that course of what happens with Adrian Chase that Robin is working with another guy like this. It's very similar to sort of his relationship with Batman at a certain point. Just, the sort of non-powered guy trying to make a difference. And so if you want some more background on this, you have the almost year of New Teen Titans stories before the annual #2. And that sort of ends with Chase sort of misleading Robin and helping him take down a crime boss. Robin is leaving Chase's apartment and it explodes. And that's where we're left off before the events of where we're starting with New Teen Titans Annual #2.
Sure.
So, Mike, did you kind of want to go over what happens in this issue or kind of give a synopsis of the events in this book?
Yeah, I certainly can. It was published in 1983. It was a dollar comic, which I didn't really realize until I pulled out my back issue. I didn't even realize they still had dollar comics in '83 still. But
Well, I think it's probably the oversized pricing for the annual.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, by that time it was just probably for annuals. But I always loved the dollar comic.
I tell you what's nice about my copy is I got 2 covers. 2 covers on mine. I feel like that should be good luck somehow, but I'm not sure how that works.
That's fantastic. Well, just to start off with the cover of this issue is one of those patented symmetrical covers by George Perez.
Yeah.
It's got Vigilante standing, pointing his weapon at the reader, and he's bookended by Donna Troy and Robin, and then you've got in his sights in the shape of a V are the rest of the Titans. I thought that was a really cool cover. And
yeah, this is a really strong, well-done cover.
Yeah. The name of the story is The Murder Machine, and it was co-plotted by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. I didn't realize George actually plotted this with Marv, but layouts, pencils by Perez, inks by Pablo Marcos, etc. The opening scene is of a news report of the firebombing of the home of Adrian Chase, which is picking up right where you said it left off in that issue that you were describing earlier. Chase was injured, almost killed. In fact, he was like clinically dead.
Clinically dead. Yeah. We'll get to that part. Yeah.
Yeah. But his family, his wife and kids, I don't remember if he had more than one kid or not, but they were killed.
Yeah.
And so apparently Robin and Adrian Chase have partnered in a raid of mobster Anthony Scarapelli's home recently. But without directly admitting his involvement, Robin defends Chase to the reporters and gets ticked off that I got to say, Robin in this whole story was very out of character from what I remembered, but maybe it was just my memory. Robin questions his decision at some point in this story to be assisting Chase in some of his unorthodox techniques. But one thing that Robin said in this story that resonated with me is that Robin says of himself that he tends to follow more than lead, which is just the opposite of what you think of Robin. So it almost reveals some of the insecurities going on with him at the time. And let's not forget that this isn't too far before he switched to his Nightwing identity.
Yeah, and there's definitely some stuff that kind of leads into the Judas contract, which I think Scott talked about last time, right?
Yeah, whenever we talked about a Robin story, yeah.
As far as Robin being more of a leader, I feel like that's sort of the role he took on here in New Teen Titans, and this is definitely sort of the Wolfman, version of that. At the beginning of the story, though, here too, where they're in the hospital, I just wanted to point out the sort of storytelling device they're using here of the newscasters on the sort of television screens. And again, this would be something we'd see a lot in Dark Knight Returns a few years later, sort of like a precursor to that. But again, we're already getting into some of the 70s Death Wish anti-hero kind of tropes. You know, you could definitely this book comes out of that kind of tradition, you know, sort of newer tradition at the time, but definitely got some vibes of that throughout this story.
Well, one thing for sure is, you know, the origin of this character is very, very similar to the origin of the Punisher.
Yeah.
With the wife and kids that are, which of course the Punisher's origin is basically based off of a character of like the Executioner, if I remember correctly, is who his origin is based off of. So it definitely feels like that's the character that they were trying to emulate over at DC. They'll change this character up a little bit, as I've been told. To make him a little bit different than the Punisher, but that's kind of where he gets his start, at least I guess the framework for the character, at least in my opinion, comes from.
Well, for sure. And like I hadn't read any of these till recently. I've just kind of known about the book growing up and that kind of thing. And on the surface, that's what it looks like. It looks like, this is DC's Punisher from the 80s.
Yeah.
As we get into this, you know, the goal is to look through his whole series. I think pretty quickly, I think maybe even the next issue we talk about here, we really start to see some differences between Vigilante and Punisher. Another note I had on here was a few pages into this, we have another subplot with the Monitor. Again, leading into Crisis on Infinite Earths.
This is only the second appearance of the Monitor.
Is it?
Yeah.
My thing is, this is sort of the subplot they were doing where they introduced Monitor, where he's sort of helping out or supplying villains on Earth. I feel like this was just sort of a, hey, we just set this up not knowing where we're going with this character. This has never really rung true to me as far as that story goes or how the Monitor story plays out. It just seems like sort of a weird thing. And I mean, from what we get here, and again, it's not like we have Harbinger in here, but again, it's still when she's just Lila. And the whole thing looks like a James Bond villain setup. With what we're shown in this, where we see the satellite floating above the Earth and him, you know, communicating via video monitor to the, you know, gangsters and stuff. Just sort of like they just, had to get something going. It almost seems like. This is also the first appearance of the Cheshire villain. It has a bigger role later with Speedy, and you know, if you watch Young Justice, she's on there.
Yeah, much later in the issue.
Yeah.
I do want to jump back to the cover for just a second. I don't know what it is about this costume design for the Vigilante, but there is something about it that just is cool. And I don't know why. It feels like it should be very, like, you should look at it and say, well, that's silly.
Right.
But I don't know. For some weird reason, I really, really like it. And I think it's like the red goggles that really, really push it over the top.
It's e-goggles. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because it gives the artist like some nice, light and reflection effects to play with whenever they're, when they're creating the art for it. So I just don't know what it is about that costume. It just looks really, really cool. And it should be one of the silliest things, but for whatever reason, I like the design.
And it's you notice this in the covers. It's ebony black. I mean, it's so black that it's just completely. You don't even see lines, and that makes it cool, I think.
Yeah, it is. It's just an awesome cover. Now you had mentioned the Dark Knight Returns too, and I thought because I just read this for the first time. Well, I don't know if I read this before or not, but I read it today, and it felt like it was the first time I'd ever read this particular issue today. So I'm gonna be coming at this completely fresh on this series. I thought you'd read this a while back, Dan, but you're reading it pretty fresh too, then.
Yeah, I'm a few issues ahead on this, but again, like just the last couple of years, I've started picking up these books, and I finally got them all. But Mike, have you read this before?
Yeah, I actually had the entire series, and I sold it back to Dennis back in 1989 for preparing for my nuptials.
So yeah.
But when I was reading, you had mentioned the whole reporting thing. My first thought was, oh my gosh, Wolfman just stole that from Miller. But it's the other way around.
The other way around. Actually,
Yeah.
I'll tell you something. It's more of a Perez thing than it is a Wolfman thing. That is the style that George Perez really loves to use. you'll see it in Crisis as well.
Yeah.
So, but
I
just
really liked one of the comments made right where we were at in this story is that they were describing the reporters were just trying to describe Cyborg, but they called him Robot Man. And I had a laugh out loud moment on that one.
Yeah, it's like the reporters don't even know who these heroes are that have been around for how long now.
Yes.
Just because they're the Teen Titans, so they're not even sure their names. Now on page, I think it's page 4 of the story, we get introduced to the Godmother, which is
Donna,
yeah,
whatever her name was, yeah.
And she's around for a little bit in the series, as far as I've gotten into it too. Like I've read ahead some here, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's going to be coming back up in this.
All right. Okay, I didn't know that. So all right.
So yeah, not necessarily just a one-off like you would think.
I agree with you, Dan, on what you said about the Monitor not being quite the character that he eventually became in Crisis. They were still struggling with what his role would be in anticipation for their Crisis. I mean, originally his name was supposed to be the Librarian, because he was supposed to be cataloging all of the superhumans' powers on Earth so they could be prepared for the upcoming Crisis. But he goes, I mean, this story really takes it over the top because he's the one that's brokering these assassins' jobs, including going after the Titans in this story. And it's something kind of notable is that the only new villain, because all of them were new, the only one that stayed around was Cheshire. And she stayed around she's one of the best villains ever. She's right up there with Lady Shiva and with that power set. So the rest of them were just throwaways.
Yeah, and speaking to those, it just feels like all of those characters look like they could be from the 80s G.I. Joe toy line.
Yeah.
every one of them. But yeah, as far as the Monitor, it really feels like they were just trying to set something up and weren't sure where they were going yet with it. And there's no real payoff with any of that in Crisis, I don't think. There's never a moment where I'm like, oh, that's why he was doing that stuff. I don't feel like it never really pays off.
It was just to be able to say, oh yeah, I remember seeing that guy in that issue of GI Combat or whatever.
Yeah.
This was something you saw a lot more in comics at this time, where they would have just a couple of panels that would then set up something that it could be, months or years even before you ever got any payoff of that. Claremont was really, really known for that, I think, in X-Men. So I just feel like Wolfman was trying to take a longer term approach to some of these characters, and some things just probably, like you said, just didn't go the way that he initially planned them. So either they came up with a better way, or there was some editorial that said we need to go a different way. But I always like those little pieces that you can expect to see something come from it later down the road.
Well, I mean, trades killed the subplot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We used to get subplots all the time in books. Kind of setting up the next story. You don't get that anymore.
That's a great quote, Dan. I'm gonna keep that one. That's like radio killed the video star. Video killed the radio star.
All right. Yeah. So I kind of made a note throughout this issue of keeping track of Vigilante's actual kills in this book, because this is something that will come up later on in the series. So I just wanted to kind of make a note of it here.
Okay.
So I have 4 actual deaths.
Yes.
At his hands here. And so the first 3 are all taking out other villains who are about to kill one of the Titans.
That's right.
Up until, I guess including the gangster too at the end, because he has shot Vigilante and Robin.
Yeah. So all 4 are all, yeah.
So all 4 are, that sort of situation. I want to point out on page 39 too, when he
I still got stuff to say about page 5.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. So back on page 5, and we've hit on this. This is where they officially announced that Chase's wife and children died in the explosion. They were just, reported as injured, and status was unknown. Page 6 of the story is where you have the doctor that comes in, and they come back to this several times, having read that he was clinically dead for 7 minutes. And that's apparently the point where they say that, and Adrian Chase says, well, that's where Adrian Chase died and became the Vigilante. So they're using that as the point where he takes on this new persona. We do get a pretty big time jump here, like between like on pages 7 and 8, where the trial of Scarapelli has actually occurred. Robin's on the is on the stand, and he doesn't really handle the situation particularly well. Chase is reported as being out of the country, recuperating, from his injuries, which we're going to learn that that's not the case. That's not at all what he has been doing. So Robin has taken on this kind of personal quest, to try to dismantle Scarapelli and his at least his mafia connections. And then on page 11 is where you get that first vigilante kill.
Yeah.
Which I know you're keeping tags on. So there's a sniper that's about ready to take out Robin,
Yep.
and they get taken out the same way that they were going to try to take out Robin, through a shot. Now it surprises me that Starfire or Robin didn't hear that,
Right.
or react to it any way. But so I guess there's the first official kill for the vigilante.
And a nice note here with the Artwork by Perez is, so we see Robin and Starfire through the villain's scope, and then we see the villain through Vigilante's scope, and they are different, and they are colored differently. Like even the design is different. Really kind of helps the reader understand what's going on.
Yep.
I think a lesser artist would have just done the same thing over both. Probably just digitally reproduced it or something.
Yeah.
But it's a good execution of that, and it really kind of helps out the reader in understanding the action in that scene.
Yeah, it's true.
And you got the next few pages are a couple of one I think that's tied to this story, and then another subplot is not really directly tied to this story. But you have the Titans meeting. Basically, there's a question: is how well is Robin handling this? Is he being the team leader? Is he just doing this out of vengeance? Is this what's is he becoming a vigilante in and of itself more so than these characters already are? But ultimately, they decide to trust Robin. Then we get a couple of pages where you've got like Raven is trying to return to Azeroth, and basically because of her taint from thank you, they won't even let her back in, so that's just more character development going on there. Then we get where the Titans are basically starting to attack Scarapelli's infrastructure, but none of this, and this is what's concerning the rest of the Titans, is none of it's actually giving them any of the evidence that they need to bring any type of conviction against this guy, which is what they feel like ultimately their goal should be. Then you get several pages introducing these, who for the most part are throwaway characters. You've got I don't remember their names. One of them was
Scorcher,
yeah,
Bazooka.
Yeah, look at these designs. These all could have been 80s G.I. Joe, actually.
Yeah, correct. So
I will say one thing about Slasher, which is a horrible name, but she looks like the hero Onyx. There was an African American hero in the 80s that only appeared in about a handful of comics and was like she teamed up with Green Arrow, I think, a few times, but very similar design. And I always regretted that they never did more with her.
Well, she came back later in the Batman books, around the time of the Orpheus storylines and around the War Games issues and things like that. Yeah, they did bring her back at one point.
I haven't got to that, I guess, yet.
But yeah, they haven't done a lot with the character. I think she's dead right now, but again, since all the reboots and stuff, who knows? So yeah, then after that, we get introduced to Cheshire.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, you didn't mention Tanker. I know Scott was just wanting to bring up Tanker.
Tanker, yeah.
Villain.
You know what? Looking at this, and later on, so what we're talking about is it looks like a robot body with tank treads for feet. And later on, it's revealed that there's a guy inside this sort of robot suit. Mm-hmm. And to me, this almost looks like a rejected version for The Brain by George Perez. Like another kind of version of that.
Yep.
It's just like the white sort of skull-looking face on it or what, but
yeah, Monster Milan Brain.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of that later on.
But these characters, these villains, basically are just introduced so that they can then go fight the Titans.
Yeah.
right? And basically be cannon fodder for the most part for the Vigilante.
Yeah.
Because then on page 30, no, two, where was the page? Page 28. I think this is the second kill, right, where Slasher is about ready to attack Garth, and we get familiar sniper scope, and Slasher gets taken out with a headshot. And then not by gun, but by nunchuck this time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we have here we get our shadowed view of Vigilante, and you don't quite get the red, in the shadowed view for his glasses. That would have been, I think, a nice touch. But he basically bludgeons our arsonist to death.
And I feel like they could say, like, oh, he might have survived that because you don't see a body, but man, the hole in that helmet
Yeah.
looks like that did something bad to the brain inside.
Yeah.
After that, on 31, we
Mhm.
have the scope again at Cheshire, but he misses.
Yes.
So right now, this is the first one that's got away from Vigilante.
So he's no bullseye.
Yeah. Oh, back on 23, I think. Yeah. So we've got a scene here where, well, it's Beast Boy now, but this was back when he was still Changeling. Turns into a monkey and gets a knife thrown through his tail in his monkey form. And again, that just looks pretty brutal compared to what,
Well, then he gets one of his wings clipped, right?
Oh yeah, and his shoulder's bleeding when he turns back to regular form.
Yeah, there's a rough time for Garfield Logan in this one.
Let's see. Then page 31. Oh, we already talked about he misses Chester. So yeah, you already covered that part. So they Raven comes back because Kid Flash is hurt. So basically comes back and saves Flash. Then we get this tape from Chase that was supposed to be information that had been presented to Robin before the bombing. But we come to find out later that's not actually the case. So on 34, you have Scarapelli is going to meet the Godmother. So we finally get the Godmother back in the story, and they comment that he seems a little bit too confident.
Yeah, and he shows up to this meeting out in the desert by himself,
with his driver, Garrett.
Family members.
Yeah. And lo and behold, he has his own assault team that shows up and starts to dismantle. Yeah.
Joe action figure.
Provided by the Monitor. So the Titans are fighting them. Of course, Robin is absent from this fight, which is pointed out. So I don't know, Mike. How did you finalize the wrap up there of the story, starting on like page 30?
Well, I on page, let's see, 30.
Oh, you can go back farther if you want. But
well, no, I wasn't going to go back. I did. I mean, it was this is the first time, of course, it was her first appearance, but Cheshire's patented power is her poisonous fingernails or claws.
Yeah.
So that's what got Wally, and that's what why he needed Raven to heal him or at least get him back in a stable condition. And like you said, when Robin gets back to Titan's Tower and shares with the team the tip that he got from Adrian Chase, they all decide to go interrupt this plot by Scarapelli to get his boss, but at the same time try to capture Scarapelli, but they didn't. Scarapelli makes it back to his Long Island residence where he's packing his bags to flee the country, but that's where he's confronted by Vigilante, and as Vigilante is, Scarapelli's freaked out and his big butt's trying to get away from Vigilante. He gets cornered and Vigilante pulls off his mask and really basically says, "Hey, I'm Adrian Chase. You killed my family." And Scarapelli's, he pleads for his life.
Does he have 6 fingers on his hand? I'm sorry.
Real quick with that too, like it's sort of presented as a mystery throughout the story of this new character that's coming in to kill people. Who else did anyone expect this to be?
Yeah.
Especially after the long setup of Adrian Chase throughout the New Teen Titans book.
Yeah. Well, Scarapelli confesses that he killed him and pleads for his life, or killed his family and pleads for his life. And right about that time, I mean, this is a, standard story type thing in movies or comics where, the guy, Vigilante wasn't going to kill him in cold blood, but then Scarapelli pulls his pistol and fires a couple shots, winging Robin and hitting the Vigilante as well. And Vigilante pulls out the big gun and makes Swiss cheese out of Scarapelli. So pretty cool ending to it. There was a lot of good action in the second half of this book, I thought.
Yeah. The fight scene with the different mercenaries is pretty good. It goes on for quite a while.
Yeah, it does.
Back on 39 real quick, I just want to point out when Vigilante is hunting down Scarapelli, we've got this sort of 9-panel grid, and then sort of over the top of the panels is this sort of zip tone version of Vigilante's mask.
I didn't even notice that before.
Yeah, I did not notice that either.
It almost looks like dirty print if you're reading it in an old book. But yeah, it is sort of this sort of watermark sort of image of Vigilante's mask over the action of that page. That's sort of a neat technique there that Perez did.
Yeah, I had not noticed that either.
Yeah.
Wow. That is cool.
Good one, Dan.
If it weren't for the red visor, I think it would be a lot harder to see. But yeah, again, it's just the quality of the books from back then.
Yeah. I just came up with some weird printing. I didn't even think about it.
And again, that's another reason why I prefer George Perez work reprinted as opposed to the originals, because I don't feel like the printing procedures were capturing the detail in his artwork back then.
Well, that's why they switched to that, Baxter paper on Titans, to get that.
Oh my God, that was some beautiful stuff. Oh my Lord.
Once I learned how to color for it. But yeah, and again at the end we've got this wrap up again with sort of the reporters on TV and Robin sort of what's his phrase? Oh, I can truthfully say I was already unconscious by the time that shot was fired, referring to Chase killing Scarapelli and him sort of dodging who killed Scarapelli, even though he knows. And
yeah,
yeah, he definitely. He sounds like a politician there, defying. I think it was a humbling experience for Robin. Here he is, he's got Starfire behind him, and he's all bandaged up, and he's on TV where everybody sees him, and he's. It has to be, and I think there was a bit of a reckoning or a come to terms moment in this story for Robin that he doesn't need to be just like Batman, which is what his girlfriend Starfire is accusing him of doing. He's trying to be someone he's not, and I thought that was a good angle.
Well, I think for him too, Adrian Chase is sort of a cautionary tale. Yeah, kind of going down that path.
And then I guess it's not really directly related to the whole Vigilante story, which is what we're focusing on. But Tara, throughout this one, we get those occasional reminders that hey, she's infiltrated the Titans, and she's not really here on their side. She's just kind of playing along until she can get their secret identities, and then we're going to get the Judas contract. So. And
I totally forgot it went back that far that she was known to the reader. That she was a double agent that early. I totally forgot.
It's surprising they played that so quick.
Yeah.
Like nowadays, they would have dragged that out. You wouldn't know until the one big reveal issue.
Oh, that would have been like a 5-year plot for Scott Snyder.
Yeah. And again, this issue ends with not the end, letting you know, like, hey, we got more Vigilante coming. And that's I think that'll lead us into the first issue of his regular monthly series.
Yep.
Again, so Vigilante #1, we got our spectacular first issue here. Again,
collared cover.
Yeah, really nice, striking cover. I think on this and sort of the art throughout, I think they're still trying to remind you of George Perez. They know where their bread's buttered here. I think again we've got that real sort of graphic image of the costume here, where the black is, all in silhouette. And we've got this sort of newspaper background behind him with these sort of graphic, these headlines of graphic stories, crime happening and stuff like that. And we actually have stories written in here, and some of them are repeated. But if you see, like, the articles are by Marv Wolfman and Keith Pollard and different guys, but there actually is text in all these. It's not just jibber jabber. Like
I would never even try to read that.
Yeah. I was kind of checking out the cover and just started glancing at it. But yeah, there is, actually text there.
Yeah, normally it's like some repetitious Latin phrase that they use for that. But
yeah,
or ipsum, whatever.
Yeah.
Now, so yeah, it starts out A Fable for Our Times, where it's just sort of a recap of what we kind of just talked about. I don't know what it is about this page in particular, but it really reminds me of Gil Kane for some reason. I don't know if it's just maybe the staging of the panels or what, but I don't know. I can't really explain it that well. And then after that, we get our big hero shot of Vigilante with his logo above him on a rooftop. Just a really great image by Pollard there, and Dick Giordano inked this issue. And
Wolfman and Perez both get credit for having created the character.
Yeah, but again, just written by Wolfman on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this splash page is really nice. I can just really kind of see this being a poster even, without the extra text on there.
Yep.
So then we're sort of introduced to the new adversaries for Vigilante here. And again, we have another ridiculous Hitman character named Brand. It's a white guy dressed in all white with a white mohawk and white sunglasses, who uses a brand of a bee to kill people. And it's just like, I feel like the mob would employ guys with probably more effective means of killing people.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been in that situation. It just doesn't seem very practical. But then we're introduced to this family, and sort of the target for this Brain character. And I want to point out too, we get it's a family. We have the father and son playing a video game. And Zaxxon.
Yeah.
And a few pages from now, we're going to see an ad for $4.95 games, and one of those games is Zaxxon.
Oh.
So I'm wondering if that's some paid promotion tie-in stuff there, story-wise.
I just like the Atari 5200 ad. I think it was in this. I can't remember if it's in this one or the New Teen Titans annual. It was in one of them, but I must have been in the Titans annual.
Yeah. You're right. That Zaxxon is on the next.
So I guess Columbia had a video game thing for a while, like Columbia House.
I guess they did. Yeah, get any one of these video games for only $4.95.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Yeah, I agree with Brand being kind of a hokey. I mean, he was effective. Apparently, he made that brand work because he was putting some people down pretty quick.
Yeah, which again, if you got to think that's just horrible to be killed.
Yeah.
If it's that effective, if it kills you that quick.
Yeah.
That's some bad stuff going on.
I did like the build-up. I mean, they showed this family, and the story will go into why they're being targeted by the assassin.
So then, we're finally introduced to Vigilante and his new support team. Now, I think later on in the story, he says it's been about 6 months that he's been operating like this. So he's had time to sort of establish this, and it looks like they're operating out of an RV.
Right. Hey, let's jump back. Let's jump back for just a second.
Okay.
All right. So what happens with Brand is whenever he breaks in to kill this family, or particularly the wife, Epi's her name? Yeah, Epi and Al, right? But he's there after Epi, which seems kind of odd, right? Should seem odd to the reader. It's like, why is he going after the wife? But Al is able to, basically, he has a gun and is able to fend off Brand. It looks like he gets a headshot on him almost, but I guess it's a glancing shot off his head, forces Brand to leave. All right. And then we get a 3-month jump to Al in court, and we're learning that Al's going to have to spend time in jail, even though he was defending himself, because he had an unregistered handgun.
Yeah.
Right. So here Al is saying, Quilt got to you. You're all paid off. So he basically flees the courtroom. And then we get this dinner party where Al breaks in, this time not with his unregistered handgun, right, but with a shotgun.
And he crashes through the windows, Batman style.
Yeah. And then before he can get off a shot, Brand is able to kill him with his brand, right? And then
the back.
yes,
Stabs the brand in his back and kills him.
Yeah.
So either he suffers a heart attack or he runs that thing through him.
and he falls face first into the punch bowl, which I thought was a nice little effect. But you see that the judge who had presided over the case is also there for dinner, and then we go to the RV.
Yeah, the 1970s Shazam TV show type RV.
Well, this whole setup now, this sort of new status quo for Vigilante really feels like an 80s Stephen J. Cannell show or something like that. This really feels like something you would see on TV every week. Where they're operating out of this RV with all these computers. He has a couple people helping him now.
Mm-hmm. Teresa Gomez and what was it?
Jay Davis is their computer with his Celic stash.
Yes. I'll just call him Microchip for the rest of the episode.
Basically, the one interesting thing I wanted to point out with this scene is, so Terry starts talking to him about Epi's situation, and so Adrian replies, I don't take on commissions. I go after those proven guilty of crimes who are then released because of some stupid technicality. So basically, we have Vigilante's mission statement right there. Mm-hmm. Sort of, setting him apart from Punisher, maybe even sort of going closer into Daredevil territory at that point, with that sort of thing. But again, just sort of reiterating what he's doing here. And again, we have him kind of leading on a motorcycle that comes out of a ramp on the back of the RV. So sort of their mobile command unit they've got going on there. And does some pretty crazy stuff with this motorcycle.
Well, it has a gyroscope in it, so that's what allows him to do all that stuff.
Yeah, cop out for the artist.
Well, here we get another similarity with Vigilante to Punisher because he won't kill a cop. And he says that here as he's being chased by the cops. It's like, I got to figure out a way to get away from these guys because I don't want to hurt them. So he jumps off of another car onto another road, so he's able to actually not cause any harm. So that's another similarity that he has with the Punisher.
So Vigilante then goes and talks to Epi about, what's going on. And she says that she worked for Quill as a secretary. And he's being indicted, and she says that he's afraid of the information she has, and that's why he wants her dead. So then Vigilante storms Quilt's home and fights a bunch of thugs, and again, doesn't outright kill anybody here. Forces a bunch of them into a thing of cement and fights Brand. And he almost
loses.
But he almost gets the brand in his eyes at this point during this fight. He's kind of hovering over him with it until Quilt, the gangster, kind of comes in and stops it. Well, him and Vigilante play tennis without rackets. What is this?
Handball.
Handball?
Yeah, it's called handball. Hey, you've ever been in a prison? That's all they play in prisons.
No, Mike, never been to prison. Sorry. even though Mike's been to plenty of prisons.
I like that through the subsequent pages, Brand got in one shot on him in his arm, so like he has this big B tattoo on his.
Yeah. More of that towards the end too.
Yeah.
But during the course of this, Quilt tells Vigilante that Epi's story isn't maybe as cut and dry as he was led to believe. And again, so he has to kind of question what he's doing here. Is he going after the right guy? That sort of thing. Then it turns out that Epi is actually blackmailing Quilt. And he is the father of her child. And again, we have Brand sort of attacking them again at Epi's, looks like a motel where she's staying. Or no, this is her house, I guess, maybe. But again, throwing some more Brand. He throws 4 Brands through a window at them. All it seems to do is kind of set the carpet on fire a little bit or something. So again, I feel like this character's real name is Brand in real life or something, and he just went with it. That sort of 80s trope.
He's an ancestor of R.J. Brand, who
Right.
sponsored the Legion.
Yeah. So again, Brand takes off in an all-white car.
Yeah.
Vigilante chases him down on his motorcycle, and they sort of end up at Coney Island.
After the car chase scene.
Yeah. Again, the 80s car chase scene.
Mm-hmm.
So Vigilante chases him up a roller coaster. He takes a couple more hits from Brand at this point, and the car from the roller coaster is coming at them, and so Brand kind of flinches, and Vigilante grabs Brand's brand and brands him in the face with it.
And Brand's brand in his face? In Brand's face?
Yeah, and Brand then tumbles off the roller coaster, presumably to his death. Yeah, and so then the next page, we see Epi kind of cleaning up Vigilante, helping him out, and we see another B now.
Yeah, you got two.
In there, yeah, the one on the arm from before, and then the one on the chest.
We'll have to watch for those bees, in future issues.
I really hope that shows back up. I don't expect it to, but I would really like it to. So then at the end, Vigilante goes back to Quilt's office to confront him, and Quilt pulls a gun on him, and then Vigilante shoots him down at his desk. As a picture that Quilt has of him and his son as a baby falls into a box of puppies that Quilt has next to his desk for some reason.
Well, he had those at the very beginning. Remember the puppies were the lesson for Brand about letting another protect her pups.
Right.
So yeah.
So
we learned that that Quilt actually wanted to bring the son back. So that was his argument, was that he wanted his son back, and we assumed to take over the family business at some point in the future. So he argued he was protecting what was his, but he shouldn't have pulled the gun on Vigilante. He might have been able to live if he hadn't.
Yeah, you can't do that.
No.
That's a bad move. You mentioned earlier the Cowboy Vigilante as being something from the animated series, but that's a character that's been around since Action Comics number 42.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but no, wasn't there some actor kind of storyline with him?
Well,
was there some movie thing with the character? That's what I meant.
Oh, I see. Okay, no, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know he was on the animated. He was on Justice League Unlimited and stuff like that.
I thought you were talking about that he was in, that he later showed up, but I was just going to say that there was a precursor to this version of Vigilante in the Golden Age, Earth 2. Mm-hmm. He was originally Greg Sanders, but somewhere in the 90s they changed his last name to Saunders, which I don't know where that happened or why. It seems sort of inconsequential, but he was there's a couple of good, or at least one good graphic novel by James Robinson with that character as this Greg Saunders being the vigilante and the prairie. He was a singer, country singer, prairie troubadour, and I always thought it was kind of, matter of fact, he was one of the main characters in that Denny O'Neil story that I was one of them that I was going to show you guys is from the 70s, where he was kind of chastising the Justice League for, this is the first issue where there was a Justice League satellite, and so yeah, he kind of crossed over into Earth 1 and was interacting with them.
Was he part of Seven Soldiers back then, or?
He sure was. He was
one of those
groups. He was back in the 40s, and they were also called the Laws Legionnaires. They were featured in Leading Comics before Leading became a Funny Animal comic around issue 14 or so. But he also shows up in the Seven Soldiers of Victory when Grant Morrison brought them back in the early 2000s.
So in this issue, we've got 2 kills by Vigilante, both in self-defense.
Oh, yeah. I didn't count him in this issue.
Probably just going to keep a running tally as we go.
Yeah, because he surely killed some of the guys when he invaded the complex, but there's none that are shown.
You don't really see that. He kind of takes them out. He throws a big group of them into the cement and that kind of thing, but I don't see where he outright kills anybody at that point.
Yeah. It's kind of like, where they, like the movies where, like, Batman drops people down sewer mains and it's like, but
Well,
he didn't kill anybody.
yeah, going back to 80 shows, A-Team was notorious.
Yeah.
One person dies on the entire series of the A-Team. But, you'll have cars overturned where the tops are obviously smashed, and you'll get a voiceover by the actors saying they're okay. So it does kind of feel like that tonally. But again, I'm expecting this book and, kind of look of it and tone, I would expect bodies would just be dropping in this series. So far that hasn't really been the case.
Does that set him apart from the Punisher at all?
I think so.
Well, the original version of the Punisher hardly ever killed anybody because he was still around when Marvel was roughly abiding by the comics code. So his thing was that he used rubber bullets. So there was a lot less. The super cold-blooded Punisher killer didn't come until much later in the character's life. Initially, he was mercy bullets.
When was that first miniseries?
Oh gosh,
83 we're talking about with Vigilante here, so I'm not sure if this.
Well, here, let me just grab it. You guys continue talking. Let me go grab it.
Yeah, go grab it, Scott. So yeah, thoughts, Mike, on these first couple issues?
I really like both issues for different reasons. The New Teen Titans Annual #2 was mostly what I expected. I mean, there were a few surprises because we've got 35 years between readings here.
Right.
But this was George. Well, it was Wolfman too, and Perez at their height. I mean, it wasn't long. It was about this time, or wasn't long after, that they launched the Baxter version of the Titans, and I liked how they eased the Vigilante character in through this story. But it was actually probably more of a Titan story, especially more of a Robin story.
Yeah.
Punisher Limited Series was 1985.
Okay, so it's a couple years after this.
Yeah.
Wait, Punisher came after?
No, the Punisher Limited Series.
His solo book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now there were some magazines for Punisher that they had that were definitely more on the violent side because the magazines didn't have the same code that the comic size had, so they could get away with more in magazines than they could in the comic books. So like Marvel Preview 2 was like his. I'm trying to remember. There was Amazing Spider-Man 129 was Punisher's first appearance, then 134, 135, and then I suspect Marvel Preview 2 came about. I can't remember if that was before or after issues 134 and 135, but that definitely had the more violent take on the Punisher than what you had from the comic side of the Punisher. So it could be more like the Executioner was than the guy who had to shoot rubber bullets at people to quote unquote punish them. Sorry, I digressed.
No, I think that's all relevant to the conversation here.
I was just getting into the reason I liked the first issue of Vigilante. It was for different reasons than the New Teen Titans Annual. It was, I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the story immensely. I thought it was a really good story. I don't know if, I'd take Brand out of it as your villain. The rest of it I thought was great. And Keith Pollard, I've had a hot and cold relationship with him, but Dick Giordano's inks over him I thought was really good, and it really, he's one of my favorite artists, Mr. Giordano, and I enjoyed this. I mean, it's a good first issue. I think it does make me wonder about these two folks that are his RV assistants. Where they come from, and the reader has to assume that you're going to get the rest of that story later.
And this series is what, 50 issues and 2 annuals?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going through what I had. I was making sure I had it all. Since we're going to be reading this, I thought, well, I better make sure I got all the issues before.
Oh, I went and, when I was in Ohio, I picked up probably 15 of them in a $1 bin.
Nice.
And some of them are written by Alan Moore too. I didn't know that he wrote some of these issues.
Yeah.
And some of the artists that we're going to see down the road. I think Gil Kane does some issues, and Alex Saviuk does some issues. In addition to, Keith Pollard, and I think Perez even has does some additional stints on the book later on. I thought I saw his name flipping through some of the covers, but I may be mistaken. On that. So.
Yeah. Now, again, this, I haven't read this before really. I know this series has a pretty notorious end to it. Mike would know that, but Scott, you don't.
I do not know that.
Okay, so nobody spoil this for Scott.
Yeah.
And again, I haven't read it, so I don't really know how it plays out and that kind of thing. But it'll be interesting, kind of going over the course of this series, I think, as we get there. Yeah, just a lot of interesting stuff. And I think the next few issues have sort of back matter, or instead of a letter column, they've got some pages by Wolfman, kind of explaining some more about the story and that kind of thing, and sort of the creation of the character. And again, for us, he was supposed to be at the Superman celebration last year in Metropolis.
Mm-hmm.
Those reasons kept him from that, but I was really hoping he would be there so I could start talking to him about some of this stuff. Because I'm sure he gets asked about Titans all the time, but probably not as much about Vigilante.
Right.
I really kind of wanted to talk to him about some of this. And yeah, so like Mike, I've just started finding these last few years in dollar boxes and here and there randomly, and finally just broke down and got the last few I needed online the other day. Got the last few issues in. But yeah, really looking forward to kind of going through this series and kind of seeing the character's journey.
I had these set aside in a box the entire run just to put up on eBay at some point and sell. And I had never gotten around to it. So
there you go.
If we had started this much later, then I might not have had them to actually go through and read them. So
this was one of those things for me where I had the Titans annual from a long time ago, and you see ads for the character and stuff, but he never really crosses over into too much other DC stuff. So I've always like, oh, maybe someday I'll get around to reading that. And it's just one of those things for me where eventually, every now and then, I'll just pick up a book where it's like, it was a short-lived thing in DC, or, it's just this weird corner of the universe that doesn't have anything to do with anything else, but it's just like, I don't know anything about it, so I'll pick it up, and even if it's a bad story, it's something else about DC I didn't know, if nothing else, by the end of it, so.
He does show up in, what is it, Days of...
No.
Oh, okay.
We'll talk
okay,
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that after we get through the series.
All right.
I think that would be a good sort of tie-up thing.
Mum's the word.
In there. Yeah, we don't want to get too many spoilers away for like the future of the book. We'll probably try to stick to the issues we're talking about, I think, as we go through these.
Yeah, because I've only actually read the annual and the first issue now.
Right.
So
yeah.
That's the extent of what I've read at this point.
I'm not too far ahead of that, but yeah.
There's another similar character.
And there are
similar character. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
I was saying there are other. DC has rebooted the character too. There were other vigilantes after this, and that kind of thing. And so I couldn't even tell you who the current vigilante is, if there even is one in DC continuity right now.
I always liked the Peacemaker. It was a Charlton character.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he had a strange headgear, looked like a toilet seat, but he was similar, being a vigilante type that would shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah.
So which issues Dan, you've thought about which issues we need to focus on for our next one, if anybody wants to read ahead and keep up with us?
I would say probably 2 and 3 right now.
Okay.
We might, I think, we're not interrupting any storylines that way or anything like that. We might do a few more the next time. We'll kind of have to look at that and kind of figure this out going forward with this. But yeah, we want to go through all the 50, some issues of the series and that. If anybody wants to play along at home, I know all these books are available on DC Universe to read. I assume they're on Comixology. I don't think there are any trades right now. I don't think any of this is in print. So it's, finding back issues or finding them online sort of thing. There was also, for some reason, I think it was last year or so, Hard Heroes did that Vigilante statue. Like their San Diego exclusive was a Vigilante statue. And it's a cool looking statue, but it was just like, who was clamoring for a Vigilante statue? I might end up buying that by the time we get through this. I might be such a huge Vigilante fan.
There you go.
Got his action figure back here.
All right, so I guess we'll hit issues 2 and 3 next time. So, Dan, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for listening to our nonsense. And again, the store, Campus Comics is open now. We just ask everybody to wear a mask and kind of just sort of, follow the social guidelines, social distancing guidelines and that sort of thing. But if you want to come out to the store, we are located at 816 East Main Street, Suite B in Carbondale, Illinois, 618-457-6011. That's every Tuesday through Saturday from 11 to 6. You can find us on Facebook or Twitter. You can find me at Detective651 on Instagram, Twitter, and TeePublic, where right now you can purchase my officially licensed Zorro t-shirt. You want to check that out on there. Where can everybody find you, Scott?
All right, I'm at burgcomics.com, burgcomics.com, eBay, Facebook, Instagram. I post comics regularly for sale, and I will be at, assuming it still happens, we're 4 weeks out, I think, or is it 3 weeks? I can't remember. I'll be at Cape Comic Con, that 3-day convention in Cape Girardeau, which July, I think it's 10th through the...
Well,
let's see. Yeah, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I think is when it is. 10th, 11th, and 12th. So I'll be set up there, and you can track me down. Mike
Atchison 5, like Jackson 5, Mike Atchison 5.
He had to check his phone to double check what his handle was.
Yeah, that's Twitter. Facebook through the Campus Comic Facebook page, and that's about it.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for listening to this 69th episode of the Campus Comics Cast, and we'll see you again next time.
It's starting recording, and it says, hey, avoid legal snags by telling people they're being recorded. So guess what? You're being recorded.